Emergency stop buttons, often referred to as e-stops, play a vital role in safety systems. They provide a means to quickly halt a machine or process in an emergency situation, preventing potential harm to personnel or damage to equipment. Accidental activation of these buttons can lead to unwanted downtime, process interruptions, and potentially hazardous situations. Therefore, implementing measures to prevent accidental contact is crucial. Guarding emergency stop buttons involves employing various physical barriers or mechanisms to minimize the risk of unintentional activation. These methods can be broadly categorized as guards, covers, and other physical barriers. Firstly, guards are physical structures designed to surround or partially enclose the emergency stop button. They are typically constructed from durable materials such as metal, plastic, or rubber. The design of a guard should allow for easy and deliberate access to the button in an emergency while preventing accidental contact from bumps, brushes, or inadvertent pressure. Different types of guards exist, each suited to specific applications and environments. One common type is a raised collar guard, which consists of a circular or rectangular collar that surrounds the button, extending slightly above its surface. This collar prevents accidental activation from objects or body parts that may come into close proximity to the button. Another type is a hinge cover guard, which features a hinged cover that must be opened to access the button. This type of guard provides an additional layer of protection against accidental activation and can be particularly useful in environments where the button is exposed to frequent impacts or vibrations. A further type is a shrouded guard, which completely encloses the button, leaving only a small opening for access. This type of guard offers the highest level of protection against accidental activation, but may also slightly impede access in an emergency. Secondly, covers are another effective means of guarding emergency stop buttons. Unlike guards that surround the button, covers are typically attached directly to the button itself, providing a protective layer over its surface. Covers are often made from materials similar to guards, such as metal, plastic, or rubber, and are typically secured with screws, fasteners, or adhesives. One common type of cover is a simple snap-on cover, which is easily installed and removed for maintenance or replacement. These covers provide basic protection against accidental activation and are suitable for environments where the risk of accidental contact is relatively low. Another type is a hinged cover with a latch, which provides a more secure closure and prevents accidental opening. These covers are suitable for environments where the button is exposed to frequent impacts or vibrations. A further type is a transparent cover, which allows visual inspection of the button without requiring the cover to be opened. These covers are useful in environments where it is important to monitor the status of the button. Thirdly, other physical barriers can also be used to prevent accidental activation of emergency stop buttons. These barriers can include fences, railings, or other structures that restrict access to the button. Physical barriers are particularly useful in environments where the button is located in a high-traffic area or where there is a risk of accidental contact from moving equipment. When implementing physical barriers, it is important to ensure that they do not obstruct access to the button in an emergency. The barriers should be positioned in such a way that they provide adequate protection against accidental contact while allowing personnel to quickly and easily reach the button when needed. In addition to the physical aspects of guarding emergency stop buttons, it is also important to consider the placement and visibility of the button. The button should be located in a readily accessible location free from obstructions and clearly visible to personnel. It should be positioned so that it can be easily reached from all potential hazard zones. The button should also be clearly labeled with the words "Emergency Stop" or a similar designation. The label should be large enough to be easily read from a distance and should be in a contrasting color to the background. Regular inspection and maintenance of emergency stop buttons and their associated guarding mechanisms are essential to ensure their continued effectiveness. The buttons should be checked regularly for damage, wear, and proper functionality. The guarding mechanisms should also be inspected to ensure that they are securely in place and functioning as intended. Any damaged or malfunctioning component should be repaired or replaced immediately. Furthermore, personnel should be properly trained on the location and operation of emergency stop buttons. Training should include instruction on how to activate the button in an emergency, how to identify potential hazards, and how to respond to emergency situations. Regular refresher training should be provided to ensure that personnel maintain their knowledge and skills. The selection of appropriate guarding methods for emergency stop buttons depends on several factors, including the specific application, the environment, and the level of risk. A thorough risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential hazards and determine the appropriate level of protection. The risk assessment should consider factors such as the frequency of access to the button, the potential consequences of accidental activation, and the likelihood of accidental contact. In some cases, a combination of guarding methods may be necessary to provide adequate protection. For example, a button may be protected by both a guard and a cover. It is also important to consider the ergonomic aspects of guarding emergency stop buttons. The guarding mechanisms should be designed so that they do not impede access to the button or make it difficult to operate. The button should be easily accessible and operable by personnel of all sizes and abilities. The design of the guarding mechanism should also take into account the potential for glove use. The button should be operable with gloved hands, and the guarding mechanism should not interfere with glove use. Compliance with relevant safety standards and regulations is also essential. Numerous safety standards and regulations address the design, installation, and maintenance of emergency stop buttons and their associated guarding mechanisms. These standards and regulations provide guidance on best practices and help ensure that emergency stop buttons are effectively protected against accidental activation. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, provides guidelines related to electrical safety, though it does not specifically address emergency stop button guarding in detail. Instead, standards like ANSI 11.19, which focuses on performance criteria for safeguarding, provide relevant information on guarding techniques. In Europe, the Machinery Directive 2006.42 EC outlines essential health and safety requirements for machinery, including emergency stop devices. EN ISO 13850 specifies functional aspects and design principles for emergency stop equipment. The selection and implementation of appropriate guarding methods should be documented and regularly reviewed. This documentation should include the results of the risk assessment, the rationale for selecting specific guarding methods, and the procedures for inspecting and maintaining the guarding mechanisms. The documentation should be readily available to personnel and should be outdated as necessary to reflect changes in the application or environment. In summary, guarding emergency stop buttons is an important safety measure that can help prevent accidental activation and ensure the safety of personnel and equipment. By implementing appropriate guarding methods such as guards, covers, and other physical barriers, the risk of accidental activation can be significantly reduced. Regular inspection, maintenance, and training are essential to ensure the continued effectiveness of emergency stop buttons and their associated guarding mechanisms. Proper risk assessment and compliance with relevant safety standards and regulations are also crucial for ensuring that emergency stop buttons are effectively protected against accidental activation. Emergency stop buttons are not simply on-off switches. They are crucial safety components within larger safety systems. Understanding their function and implementing proper guarding is key to a safe working environment. Firstly, it is important to remember that the specific type of guarding will depend on the machine or process being controlled. Secondly, consider the environmental factors. For example, if the button is located in an area where it is likely to be splashed with fluids, a sealed or waterproof cover may be necessary. Thirdly, take into account the frequency of use. If the button is used frequently, a more durable guard or cover may be necessary. In addition to physical guarding, administrative controls can also be used to reduce the risk of accidental activation. These controls include procedures for lockout-tagout, which ensure that machines are properly de-energized before maintenance or repair work is performed. They also include training programs that teach employees how to properly use emergency stop buttons and other safety devices. Finally, it is important to remember that guarding emergency stop buttons is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process that requires regular monitoring and maintenance. guards and covers should be inspected regularly for damage or wear and tear, and they should be replaced as needed. Employees should also be retrained periodically on the proper use of emergency stop buttons and other safety devices. By taking these steps, employers can help to create a safe and healthy work environment for their employees. Emergency stop buttons should always be easily accessible and clearly visible. They should be located in areas where they can be quickly and easily activated in an emergency. Emergency stop buttons should also be labeled clearly so that employees can easily identify them. Employees should be trained on the proper use of emergency stop buttons and other safety devices. They should know how to activate the buttons in an emergency and what to do after the buttons have been activated. Emergency stop buttons should be inspected regularly to ensure that they are in good working order. Any damaged or malfunctioning buttons should be repaired or replaced immediately. Employers should also conduct regular safety audits to identify potential hazards and ensure that all safety devices are properly maintained. One of the most important aspects of emergency stop button safety is proper training. Employees should be trained on the location of all emergency stop buttons in their work area, how to activate the buttons, and what to do after the buttons have been activated. Training should also cover the potential hazards associated with the equipment or process being controlled by the emergency stop button. In addition to initial training, employees should also receive regular refresher training. This training should cover any changes to the equipment or process being controlled by the emergency stop button, as well as any updates to safety procedures. Training should be documented to ensure that all employees have received the necessary instruction. Furthermore, employers should create a culture of safety in the workplace. This means encouraging employees to report any potential hazards and to take steps to prevent accidents. It also means providing employees with the resources and support they need to work safely. Another important aspect of emergency stop button safety is proper maintenance. Emergency stop buttons should be inspected regularly to ensure that they are in good working order. Any damaged or malfunctioning buttons should be repaired or replaced immediately. Inspections should be documented to ensure that all buttons are being inspected on a regular basis. In addition to inspections, emergency stop buttons should also be tested periodically to ensure that they are functioning properly. Testing should be performed by qualified personnel and should be documented. If a button fails a test, it should be repaired or replaced immediately. Employers should also conduct regular safety audits to identify potential hazards and ensure that all safety devices are properly maintained. Audits should be performed by qualified personnel and should be documented. Any hazards identified during an audit should be corrected immediately. In conclusion, guarding emergency stop buttons is essential for preventing accidental activation and ensuring the safety of personnel and equipment. By implementing appropriate guarding methods, providing proper training, and maintaining emergency stop buttons regularly, employers can create a safe and healthy work environment. The ultimate goal is to minimize risks and create a secure workplace for all.